want to swear, it's just doing that stupid buffer thing. So,
Yeah.
no restrictions on language, anything like that. Say what you want to say the way you want to say it, and we're golden. So we'll get started. I just want to say that we're lucky today to have Scott from Skeletonwitch join us for a conversation. Hello, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, actually, all things considered.
All things considered. I know we were originally going to do this last week, and we were going to have you pee in a bucket, but we decided that would probably not make the most sense to do on YouTube.
Right, and for some context, that was almost out of necessity. I actually had some, like, I'm getting old. It turns out we all age, and I had some, like, crazy, debilitating back pain. I was, like, laying in my bed, and I ran a marathon, like, a few weeks ago, and then, boom, back pain to where I was considering the bucket.
Oh.
So we rescheduled. I'm much more upright this week. I feel 80% better.
Good. So you're on the mend. That
Yeah.
would be the way. Awesome.
Yep.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least touch on briefly the strange circumstance that humanity finds itself in, right?
Right.
So I'm just checking in on you, how things have been doing for you, how things have been going for your bandmates, and maybe a little bit about, I know physical exercise for you is important. Just talk about maybe some of the ways that you've been getting through this incredibly strange time.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I really am. You know, I'm not out on the streets. I have my health, minus the back injuries. I mean, really, I'm doing well. I'm speaking to you from my apartment in Los Angeles. My girlfriend and I live here, and she also works in the music industry. She's a publicist, and she's able to work from home. So we've become office mates. And as of this past calendar year, I've been doing a film scoring program, at UCLA. And so I've been spending a lot of my time here writing music and then attending class. So for me, like, my day-to-day during this year, the pandemic hasn't honestly altered it a ton because I spent all my time writing and attending class. The biggest thing being that classes moved to online, and they canceled a few courses that they can't teach without a physical orchestra. But yeah, by and large, though, I mean, I'm very lucky. And so yeah, I go for walks or runs. I was running until my back. You know, so I get my exercise, and I spend tons of time with music, listening, writing. So I'm doing all right. And the other day we did the Skeletonwitch guys. We did a Zoom together. We text a ton. I mean, we text every day. There's a text thread that all of us are on, and it's as dumb as you would think it would be. It's fun, you know. That keeps us all in touch, and you know, I mean, it's almost like we leave tour and then we just continue hanging out via texting. So those guys are doing well. Like, Adam works at a brewery when we're not on the road, and he's still able to do that. Our bass player Evan lives in Graz, Austria. Believe it.
How are things for him right now in that neck of the woods?
Good. He's doing well. I mean, Graz, even though it is a larger city in Austria, it's still not as populous and not as dense population-wise. So, and then he also lives outside of the town, like in the hillside, sort of. So he's remote. So he's, as far as the pandemic literally is concerned, I mean, they're spaced out. He and his wife are healthy. Their family is good. Her family owns like a restaurant catering business that he works at and stuff too, when he can. So he's on the road and stuff. So I know that for the longest time that was functioning, and they were doing takeout stuff, and he was helping out. But I think they recently shut down. But he's good. That's all to say that he is good. You know, they have a nice place. They're safe. They're sound. Yeah. And same with Nate. He's in Ohio, home base for Skeletonwitch. He and his girlfriend are hunkered down. She is a healthcare worker, not on the front lines, but still, nonetheless, like, I check in, and he said she's doing just fine. So
good.
We are all okay. I mean, there are people that have it much worse off than us in the Skeletonwitch camp, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that's good to hear that you are all doing well. It was funny getting ready for this. Sometimes I just kind of creep on people's social media feeds, and recently on the Skeletonwitch feed, there was the picture of you and Nate, God, maybe 2006, getting ready to record Permafrost.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And you looked like a little kid, brother. I forget. Time has really gone by, you know.
I'll say.
For all of us. I mean, I have no hair. Okay, I'm jealous of you. So let's not even go down that direction. But it got me thinking. You know, I'd like to just kind of walk in a little bit of time here. I'd like to walk back to those early years of Skeletonwitch and just have you talk to me a little bit about you as a musician, what your influences were, what your vision was when you were that young kid. I mean, by then you already had an album out by the time that picture was taken, but bring me back when you were still wet behind the ears and what that vision was and what your influences were.
Yeah, yeah. At that time, Nate and I had just met. We hadn't known each other terribly long when that photo was taken, but we were obviously, as you can tell, becoming fast friends. And at that time, my biggest love and my first music that really was outside of the box, so to speak, was like 60s, 70s rock and roll. I mean, I'm wearing a Radio Birdman T-shirt in that photo, which if you're not familiar with, yeah, definitely check them out. An awesome Australian rock band from the 70s. But like the Stooges, MC5. You know, that Detroit sound.
So a lot of dirty garage kind of stuff.
Yeah. Around that time, I was probably when I like purchased that Nuggets box set. If you know that series.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like all that kind of stuff. I was way into that even before really I was into metal. But I always just had a pretty big passion for music. But rock and roll, like real good rock and roll, if you will, like finger quote it, was what first like made me realize there's more out there. And it was the first stuff I started buying, you know, from the local record store, which is really kind of an influence from my older brother, you know, cool older brother that steers you down the path. He was into that stuff, so that was what I jumped into. And then, you know, from there I got into plenty of metal, and it just spiraled out of control in all directions. You know, I was buying Devo and Typo Negative records at the same time when I was like 17, even 16. I got my driver's license and was driving to the record store to buy like World Coming Down by Typo Negative, and then like all the Small Faces were, you know, or something.
Wow.
Like, yeah, so that's due to I wasn't that cool. I had older people like steering my taste, and it was fortunate. So I've been listening to a lot of weird music for a lot of years, or just off kilter stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think that might be a thread through this conversation, because when we get to the program that you're doing now in the instrumental work, I mean, that's certainly, you're dealing with composers who are very avant-garde in their time. I saw that you were reading some Arnold Schoenberg, et cetera, from your work. I mean, talk about a guy at the time who was outside. I mean, there was a group of them experimenting with that stuff, but he was radical.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then the stuff you're doing with Dead Neanderthals, to me, I'm hearing echoes of Glenn Branca and that kind of stuff. So you definitely, there's always been that avant-garde side to you. That's interesting to know that it hit early.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it started with rock and roll, but even it wasn't too long before I got turned on to like Acid Mother's Temple and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing them back when I was too young to buy a beer. I remember that.
Fair enough.
At the show in Columbus, Ohio, and also seeing the Japanese band Ghost. I don't know if you know them, but check them out. They're another weird sort of hippie noise.
Yeah.
They have psychedelic records. They have more acoustic, weird, like Japanese, like hippie protest records. It's all.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When everybody was like, "You should check out this band Ghost," when the rock band was coming up, I was like,
"Right.
Oh, you like that Japanese band too?" And everybody was like, "No, it's this other thing."
How did this obscure Japanese band get everyone's attention all of a sudden?
Yeah. For a minute, it kept coming on my radar, and I was like, "Why do I keep seeing this?" Oh yeah, that's right. It's that other thing.
There we go.
But yeah, so I've always just been musically curious, and
absolutely,
you know, like every once in a while, the guys in the band, you know, Nate, like I remember one time, I think it was Nate maybe that walked into our dressing room when we were in France, and I was in there by myself, and I was listening to, it was definitely a Pharoah Sanders record. He's like one of my favorites, and I think it was Nate. He walked in and he was like, "Dude, is this guy just gonna like skronk on this saxophone for like no. Probably like 25 or 30. And you know, Nate sort of shakes his head. Then we have a beer together and laugh, and put on like Merciful Fate or whatever. That, you know, that's always been our dynamic. He's always, you know, we have a lot in common, and then there's other stuff where he's like, Scott's into this, and Evan and Scott are into that. And so I've always been sort of the guy who likes all, you know, the chameleon, I guess, musically. Not to say that everyone else is so narrow, but like, the other guys won't get quite as weird with me.
I think it creates a nice dialectic, though, right, within the band.
It does.
You know, and because go ahead. Sorry, yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like I'm selling, you know, the guy short a little bit. Like Adam has it. He loves Swans and a lot of really dark ambient. I mean, I'm into it too, but not as much as he is. Like, that's his thing. So we all have different tastes, and you're right. It does. It makes it work. It makes sense.
Absolutely.
For us. Yeah.
So we're going to do like a quick run through the skeleton. I'm not even going to do it any credit. I mean, I just, fair enough to say that the word that comes to my mind when I hear early Skeletonwitch is frenetic, right? There's just a frenetic energy to it that is incredible. And in many ways, to me, I'm going to make an analogy that may be off, but you kind of hooked into that Midwestern death metal, thrash metal. I'm thinking Morbid Saint, right? Because I lived in Wisconsin for a while, and so I mean, there was this massive frenetic energy in those early releases that was beautiful, just awesome. But we've seen this journey with you guys, and so I'm interested to explore that journey a little bit. I want to fast forward up to, I know this is a quick jump, but I don't want to take all your time. I don't want to the Apothic Gloom and just the period when Adam joined the band, and simply couch it in this way and then turn the floor back over to you. The history of music and rock music in particular is littered with bands who have tried to change their front person, vocalist, and have failed.
Yeah.
And so I want to take you back. We're on the other side now. We know that it works, so it must be nice to take that deep breath. But God damn it, going into that, what was that like as a band? And that's a chance you're taking, and it's a calculated. Just bring me back to that moment in time and how you were feeling as you were going through that change.
Sure. I mean, at that time, we considered for sure, like, just not continuing. You know, we you know, Nate and I had several conversations about, do we want to do this? If so, how are we going to do this? And to be honest, once we had those conversations and got all that out of the way and sort of decided that we wanted to continue and move forward and talk a little bit about how we were going to do that, that was the hardest part. Once we decided to do it, it was like, all right, we came so close to the edge. Who gives a shit, you know, what happened, what people think? Because we were ready to just hang it up. You know, we had considered doing that. We thought, all right, when you think about the possibility of it not occurring at all anymore, you know, by choice, then it's somewhat freeing, honestly.
Absolutely.
All right, what's the worst that's going to happen? People hate it. We stop, but then we stop. Whatever. Who cares? You know, it was our thing. We built it. So if we do, we can do what we want with it. And we were confident. We knew not everyone was going to like it, and that's okay. I mean, there's nothing you can do unless you do the same thing again to not get that reaction, at least with some people, or even a good portion of people. Like, that's fine. So we were prepared for that, and we were confident about what we were doing, and also knew that it would take some time. I mean, I think we're still honing sort of this second round of Skeletonwitch, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that things changed. The brand new singer, and I ended up taking over more of the writing. It just sort of happened. It wasn't, we didn't sit down and say, like, I'm going to write more. And, you know, because up till that point, Nate had been the principal songwriter, with me contributing ideas and riffs and a song or two here or there. But he was more of the composer, actually, and I was more of it, had ideas and would throw them in and stuff. And it kind of flipped, where from that point on, I wrote more of the material.
Right.
And
did that start with the Apothic Gloom EP release that your kind of influence picked up a little bit more? It's, you know, it's a mixture. Both you and Nate are going back, you're like this. But is that when it started to pick up that you were adding maybe a little bit more to the compositional side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was definitely it. I mean, part of that also became, to be honest too, like not having Chance there, our old singer, who was really scared to do anything different. That's too long. That's too weird. I would come up with ideas. Like, it was by default too long. Like, is the idea good? Well, like, let's talk about that before we just talk about you're scared because it's long or something. Let's talk about the validity or
so kind of move beyond preconceived notions here and talk about whether this song on its own is good.
Yes, exactly. So, and Adam is much more open. So not only did we not have someone stifling things, but we also had someone bringing a lot to the table. And Adam, he had a lot of great ideas and for molding the songs. And there was a creative back and forth that was not there in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, Chance had some good ideas, but he was very much a control freak, but he didn't write the music. So he was like stepping all over it, but he wasn't writing or how to play an instrument. Or he played drums, but he didn't write a note.
Right.
And so it was honestly an unhealthy level, like a creative relationship across the board, and that opened up. And so I think during the EP we started to find our footing, and then we really started to find it on the next record.
I mean, Devouring Radiant Light. Jesus, dude, come on. That's incredible. From the first listening, just starting with Fen of Shadows and just I'm gonna sound like Nigel Tufnell on fucking Spinal Tap, but the simple lines intertwining at the beginning of that song, right, is very compositional in its nature. And then you have the song build, and then Adam kind of on a full EP announces himself with that fucking roar, and it's like we're off to the races for that. It was a great intro to an album, I thought.
Yeah, it felt like it was. It's sort of like a something large with lots of momentum slowly start. I feel like it starts the album well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of thought behind that intro in particular as the lead track?
There was actually, yes. When I wrote that, when I had finished that song, even the demo, I knew I was going to bring it to the guys and suggest that we start the record with that. And I once I took over or had played a bigger role in the writing and knew I could get away with a lot more than I used to be able to. I was writing sequentially. Like when I finished that track, I was thinking, what comes next? What do I want to hear? I was thinking in the sequence of the album, and not everything ended up that way. And of course, Nate wrote plenty of stuff, and I even allotted for it. I thought, okay, at this point, even though it didn't get sequenced exactly the way I thought, it helped me write it, to think of it that way. Like, this is a great intro track. I do want to reprise this beginning at the end of the record. I knew that, and it felt like, all right, I had a few songs in the can, and I thought, all right, I know what Nate's going to do, and I mean that in the best way possible. I know he's going to give me some classic, if you will, Skeletonwitch rippers with these frenetic stuff that you're talking about. He'll bring the energy. And so I was anticipating him to fill these gaps that I was mentally leaving as I was writing songs. Like, I know.
So when you were writing a song like The Vault, did you have? So was that one of yours, or?
Yeah.
So did you have like another song in mind that it was going to follow after and all of that when you were writing?
Yeah. I have to look and see how it's even sequenced now, but the way that it is, I can't even remember what comes right before or right after, but it was thought out. I thought, like, okay,
unbelievable.
Leading into this track, because it's like a somber, pretty mellow beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a long fucking song, so for us especially.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll do a 20-minute thing with the Dead Neanderthals, but not Dead Neanderthals. But so I knew that some people would look at the length or start like tapping on the desk like as the intro is going, like when does the song start?
Right.
Which whatever. But I mean, so I wanted to temper that a little bit with something on each side that's a little more energetic, and that's where like Nate provides a lot of energy.
Absolutely. So that's interesting. So as we're talking about the Apothic Gloom and in particular Devouring Radiant Light, when I hear you talk about thinking of a release in kind of a global sense, right, as an album, as a collection of songs, that's something that's a thought process that's very akin to a more classical composer, let's say, for example, right? Thinking about things in that more global and then moving down to the particular piece. Is this around the same time that you start to develop, I mean, basically that you enter this program? I mean, talk a little bit about what you're, not a lot of people decide, hey, I'm going to join a fucking program. I'm in this band, but fuck it. I'm going to really broaden my kind of perspective on music. So I'd love to know if just what made you move in that direction, how that fed back into the Devouring Radiant Light experience, and go from there.
Yeah. So when I started writing that record, I was living in Ohio still at the time, and during the process of that record, moved to New York, and then moved to, I guess, then we finished recording it, and then I moved here. So it was, by the time we were doing press for the record, it was in Ohio, then New York, then LA. So I had all sorts of change in my life, and like just on a personal level, and through all of that, you know, I learned a lot about myself. I had gotten out of a very long-term relationship, like gotten really, really engaged in my creative side more than I ever had with the band before. And that's when I started doing this long distance running and stuff as well. So it became this weird, like cheesy sort of personal growth period where I was taking on new challenges. You know, I was running marathons. I was, you know, I moved, uprooted my life in a lot of different ways. And it felt good. I just went with it. And when I ended up out here, and we had already done a lot of touring, and we were doing the Skeletonwitch thing. Throughout the process, it started to dawn on me that I want the band to be fun and creative, and I don't want it to be a stressor. And part of being in a band that's stressful, when you're towing that line of like doing it full time, is that you're worried about merch nights. You're worried about how the record's set. Like you want to be able to do it, so you hope it sustains. It's sustaining, so you can focus on it and not have to work a full-time job and then cram it in the evening and the morning hours. You want to be able to do it full-time, but that adds this level of stress. So one of the facets of me getting into this program was I wanted to have creative outlets. So we just talked about how I like a lot of different styles of music. I wanted to be able to delve into that side and not be stressed out because of the
you don't have to sell a certain number of units of this shit.
Right. I didn't want to only do heavy metal and have to like be frustrated by like this is the only creative output I have. I didn't want to have to like incessantly tour just because we want to keep the lights on. And so a good solution to all of this was to just continue my creative growth and challenge myself. And learn these skills, so I can become a better composer. I can write better Skeletonwitch music. I can also do film and TV music, which is something I want to do. So I know it's a little bit selfish too, because I love those guys and I don't want to take touring away from them, so to speak, for all that time. But like we have to grow and find other things to do, and the band can't be the only thing, or it will suffocate it.
Yeah.
So for me, enrolling in this program was a way to just to become a better writer, learn a lot more skills, learn how to orchestrate, be able to do more things, and that would also make Skeletonwitch less stressful if I had other income, other things to do, and I would want to do it more, and it would become a more interesting endeavor, and not just like, okay, God, we got to do this. Like the deadline's ticking for the next record, we have to tour because everyone's poor. Like these are not good reasons to do things.
Right. Do you plan? I know we'll segue in a second to the Dead Neanderthals release, because as an old friend of Glenn Branca and just kind of experimental avant-garde, kind of, for lack of a better term, noise compositions, I found it fucking fascinating. But on your instrumental work, on the compositional pieces, are you planning at some point on kind of debuting some of these pieces or releasing some of these down the road, or is it it's kind of, it'll come out when it comes out?
I need to get off my ass and finish it. I mean, the part of the problem too is as I'm going through this program and I'm studying a lot and learning, I keep rewriting. I'm like, I can do this better. I need to, like, at some point I need to stop and just finish. But yes, I intend to release an album of more ambient I mean, the stuff falls in so many different categories too. I need to make sense of it and hone it and make it make sense. So we'll see what form that takes. But yes, absolutely records. And maybe I'll form it into different little categories. You know, I would like to put some more noisy stuff out with Keith Utek at Utek Records, who put out the Dead Neanderthals.
Very cool.
I would love to do some more. I love American primitive guitar and John Fahey and like that whole world, and it'd be really, really fun to get some of that material I have together and finish it and see if I can maybe even do something with like Three Lobe, which is the shirt I'm wearing, Three Lobe Records. So I have ideas and potential homes if they'll have me for some of this stuff. So I just need to get it finished. But I'm also still a full-time student, and I'm writing orchestral stuff for classes. I've done some like tiny commercial work, like YouTube commercials and stuff. That pay the bills. So
how are your grades coming?
Excellent.
Okay, very good. We all want to know how your grades were, Scott. So I'm going to transition to Dead Neanderthals, and then we'll probably one or two questions after that for you. You did a release with Dead Neanderthals. 2019 is when it came out, correct?
Correct.
The name of it was Ghosts. It's 2 songs, but it's an LP, I would consider, because these are 20-minute long songs.
Yeah.
We have Bone Hill, and I forget the name of the second piece.
So do I.
You know what? I'll put a link to it.
I think it's is it Death Knell? Let me see. You would think I don't even know the name of the Skeletonwitch songs.
He's a busy guy. You know what? I'm not going to edit this out either. This is the best part.
Care. No, you shouldn't. Definitely don't edit it. Let's see. Yeah, I have to look it up, which is hilarious. Oh man, they've done 2 records since, and they're both really good.
They really.
Death Bell. That's right.
Say it again.
Death Bell. B-E-L-L. Yeah, they are. Those guys are really prolific.
Now, so I know, and this may be a bittersweet thing. First of all, just talk to me about that release, what brought you guys together, etc. But then also talk about you were supposed to have a live experience performing these pieces, and that would have been a couple weeks ago, and just that's gotta suck, dog. So just talk about the whole Dead Neanderthals experience, if you would.
Sure. Like all horrible things, we came together on Twitter. They actually just Renee, the drummer, posted something about our last Skeletonwitch record online, like how much he liked it. I was shocked that he knew of us. I thought they were this cool avant. Well, they are, but like these cooler than
too cool for school.
Right. And I was really surprised, so I just wrote him a message. I was like, dude, I was listening to you guys a ton while I was writing that record, and we just connected. And then the next time we were in Europe, I hit them up and asked if they wanted to come hang out. So they came to a show in the Netherlands, and we had a few beers and hung out after the show, and they were great. We hit it off. So then when I came back here, we just ended up like we did like file trading essentially. You know, they recorded in the studio and sent me tracks, and then they just threw me different stuff, and it became that record. So
yeah.
So then that was how we wrote, was just long distance. But
yeah, I mean, for me, like I told you at the beginning, I'm going to strongly encourage you to track down that kind of thought process that's involved in that release, because to me, it has real echoes of Glenn Branca's early kind of Ascension pieces and some of the, and I can see that, I think in maybe you'll take up the guitar orchestra mantle, because I would love to see you do something like that.
It's funny you say that, actually, because for the longest time, as I started this whole composition, that like formal composition program and then learning orchestration, I was sort of shunning the guitar. Like, you know, I didn't want to be the rock guy trying to do orchestral music or something. But as I get further along, I'm starting to realize that there's a way to maybe play. It's maybe it's a strength, not a weakness. And I should use it, and I could maybe use it in an interesting way. So, and Glenn Branca is a great example of that, actually. So, I mean, I love him. He's awesome, and what a wonderful asshole that guy was.
Yeah, Yeah, see, that's where, like, the other person that it reminded me of was also some of the very obscure early Lee Ranaldo solo work that, like, he would put out 2,000 pressings of, you know, just like feedback loops and shit. And Lee was always the nice side to Glenn Branca. You know, Glenn Branca was the asshole noise man, and Lee was kind of like, hey man, he's like, you know, like your best friend. He's
wonderful. Yeah, all that stuff is great. I'm such a fan of all that stuff too. So absolutely, I think that seeped into that music, like the Dead Neanderthals thing, because there are a ton of guitar tracks on there. I mean, all of it's obvious, not all of it's riffy, so there's just a lot of drone and stuff on there. But absolutely, I wasn't thinking of Branca at the time, but I've listened to him a ton, and now that you say it, absolutely, yeah.
One of I'll end our talk about Dead Neanderthals by just mentioning this, and it may relate actually to some of the longer material that you've worked on with Skeletonwitch. But the thing that was embedded within the song Bone Hill for me was the idea of variations in what, upon first listen, there's not a lot of variation going on there if it's on in the background. But if you pay close attention, there's innumerable variations that are going on, kind of warped in and out. And that's what I found interesting was the idea of using longer pieces as a way to express subtle variations and the power in subtle variations rather than an in-your-face blast beat or something. There's a heaviness to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely deep listening. You know, which if you're familiar with Pauline Oliveros,
yes,
it's something that it's not for everybody. You know, if you put it on and then after a minute or two think like this hasn't done anything yet, it's probably not for you. You know, it is subtle and it's very meditative, if you will. And that's the type of stuff I love. In addition to, you know, the crazy rock and roll. That's my version of chilling out. Is like super repetitive. Like, you know, I was just listening to some Philip Glass, and you know, like, great. I mean, he's done so much stuff. It's when you say Philip Glass, it means a lot. But
1,000 things,
yeah. But his like really cyclical, repetitive, you know, minimalist stuff is great, and it reminds me of the way of when I first listened to like black metal when I was younger. Mm-hmm. At first, I was like, what is this? I didn't get it.
Yes.
It was really weird, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And then at some point, I listened to enough of it, it just sort of clicked, and I could tell what was going on, and it didn't sound like noise or a wall of sound. It made sense. I could tell what everybody was doing. And in a lot of ways, minimalist composition and certain noise music, if you will, ambient music, does that for me too. Like it all of a sudden came into focus for me.
It puts in many ways it shifts a big burden onto the listener.
Yes, it does.
Because first of all, just when you strip out lyrics, you're stripping out concrete reference points to experience, you know, to every, and so it's up to the listener to inject some meaning in there because, you know, I don't know what the fuck you're thinking about when you make a 20-minute piece like Bone Hill. But if I listen to Fen of Shadows, I can read the lyric sheet, and it gives it a little bit more context. So I think there is a shift onto the listener in some way, and it's a respect to the listener.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's not for everybody. I mean, people are very impatient, probably more so than ever, because a million things competing for our attention. It's easy to distract oneself. So, yeah, it's challenging, but I also, at least I personally, what I get out of other music of that ilk is it's more rewarding for me sometimes when it takes a little longer. You know, it's a little harder to get to understand it or get there. You can, you know, personally speaking, it sometimes resonates with me more deeply than something that just hits you right away. But you know, depends on your mood.
It's analogous, you know, as a long distance runner, it's the difference between an ultra marathon and a sprint. You know? Yeah,
that type of music too is great for running. Like I love listening to like krautrock when I run. Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, that kind of stuff is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'd be remiss, like I told you earlier, if I didn't ask anybody who's tuning into this video that I do is going to be like, when's the next Skeletonwitch?
Sure.
So just talk to me about how you guys are doing, where you are in the creative process, and what we have to look forward to as fans.
Right. So we've just got things sorted out with another label, which is great. Which we'll announce that and deal with that later. But we closed the door with Prosthetic Records, which needed to happen. We needed to move on. So we have everything is set now. We have a new label. We have everything ready to go, and I'm wrapping up, a priority of mine that I wanted to do. So as I wrap that up, I think all of us are starting to talk again about writing, about what we want to do, and we're gonna have some time because I don't think we're gonna be able to play shows for quite a while. We all know that's all up in the air. So it's time to sit down and start writing this thing. But I really don't know how long it's going to take. I can't say exactly what, but we cleared a lot of things out of the way with the label of just a bunch of business crap and my own personal stuff. I've taken this time to pursue other endeavors. So I think we're circling back around to
beautiful
writing time.
Beautiful. We're all looking forward to that. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
If I got you and I took you in a time machine, and we journeyed back, I think it would be to Ohio maybe, to see a 15-year-old Scott. And I allowed you to give yourself one piece of advice. And then I'm popping you back in that time machine and we're going back to right now. What would that piece of advice be to a young Scott? What would you say to yourself?
Ooh, that's tough. I'd probably tell myself not to listen to everybody else. People are full of bullshit. No one knows what they're talking about. I used to worry a little more about what people thought of the music we were writing, of what I was doing. I was more self-conscious and I cared too much. Like, who gives a shit? I'm not listening to other people so much. Do my own thing. No one knows.
Fly your freak flag high.
Right. And
I did. Go ahead. Sorry.
I also tell myself not to sell that Roland Space Echo that I was about to sell. Yeah.
Oh.
I still had that thing.
Yeah. Just the knob play on those things, right? With you could just do that for a half an hour. You just set up a loop and you could just play with. Oh God damn.
That thing was awesome. Yeah.
You'll get one again someday.
I'm gonna sell a kidney and
Yeah, that's true. Well, but if you're peeing in buckets, to bring it all back to the beginning of the interview, I don't know if anyone's gonna buy your fucking kidney.
That's a good point.
So listen, I wanna thank you for taking some time, Scott. You were really, personally, on a personal level, you were super cool to me because you were like the first national act that was kind of like, hey, your photography doesn't suck.
No,
we use a couple of these pictures. So for me, that was really fucking cool to have you just, that was cool for me.
Absolutely. It's good photography. You do good work. You deserve it.
Thank you. Well, you do fucking good work. In a time like COVID, when we're all shut in, if you don't have time for a 20-minute song now, you never will. So go on Bandcamp, hit Dead Neanderthals, listen, I believe was the phrase that we were talking about, to some of those pieces. Always got Skeletonwitch to listen to. And Scott, again, thank you very much. I want you to be safe. I want everyone in Skeletonwitch to be safe. And at some point, we'll see each other down the road in Seattle.
Absolutely, we will. You be safe as well. And I appreciate your time as well.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Adios.